Since the start of the pandemic, China's approach to containing coronavirus has differed to much of the rest of the world. Millions have been put under strict lockdowns to break the chain of transmission. International flights in and out of the country are yet to resume on a large scale. Some have questioned whether China's zero-tolerance approach is an overreaction. Others say there's no alternative. Wang is chief economist at Hang Seng Bank. I asked her if China's response to the virus makes economic sense.
So far, the impact of the zero-COVID policy have its pros and cons, and the most negative impact is mostly concentrated in the catering industry and city services. But when it comes to China's economic growth overall, the impact is more positive than negative. Because we know after COVID, China has been relying on export and manufacturing for its growth. And the zero-COVID strategy has basically given China the advantage of keeping its supply chain stable. So we knew that the world had the supply chain disruption as its main theme in 2021, but that's not a problem for China within the border of the country.
So tell us more about what sectors have been hardest hit and how.
For services sector, the impact is quite significant and mostly negative. But when it comes to agriculture and industries, especially manufacturing, the impact is quite positive. And for manufacturing, like we said, it has been probably one of the best years for China. And that's partly driven by the strong overseas demand, but partly also because of the zero-COVID strategy.
And what are the economic advantages of maintaining the policy?
I do have quite mixed feelings about this strategy, because when you look at the economic cost, it's mostly being borne by individual families and by the communities that have been impacted the most, especially for the city like Wuhan and Xi'an, especially those people are in the lockdown communities, they are truly suffering. But for the overall economy, the zero-COVID strategy, I think it's inevitable. It's an inevitable choice. There has to be a compromise between what's best and what's possible. For the Chinese government, and they are well aware of the insufficiency of China's hospital system. And in the first 100 days of Wuhan situation, when the COVID first started, there was a serious run on the healthcare system, and there was a loss of control situation going on for quite a long time. So for myself, I live in Shanghai right now. Even without many COVID cases, most hospitals are quite crowded. So I cannot really imagine an alternative strategy that by opening the border or just by a free flow of people in and out of the country, it's going to cost the government capacity to control other situations, like guarantee the supply for the most needed, and also to ensure the labor market security for the low-income groups.
We did see some local lockdowns causing stoppages at ports in China. What are the implications for the global supply chain if those continue?
The global supply chain has been really affected by the disruption in transportation. So far, the biggest hurdle for China's export and production is in fact not in terms of production, but in terms of shipping. The shipping cost has been prohibitively high, and there's no sign of coming down anytime soon. But when it comes to the production capacity and also to supply consumer goods at a reasonable price, China can still guarantee its current order. And we have also seen that the overseas PMI for most Asian countries and for Latin American countries are picking up pace, which means the supply chain in those countries are also improving. The world is probably going to depend on China's supply for quite a bit longer time. We anticipate probably at least for the first half of this year, China will still be the manufacturing center for industrial goods and consumer goods. But in the later half of this year, probably the other part of the world can pick up in their supply.